August 14th, 1867. I was standing in Elwood Gantry's tax office buying tobacco when I heard a sound that stopped my heart cold. It wasn't a scream. Lord knows I'd heard plenty of those at Shiloh. No, this was chalk scraping against a board, desperate and violent like fingernails on a coffin lid. A girl who couldn't speak was trying to say something no words could carry. Through that doorway, I saw her, a widow not yet 30, reaching for the ribbon at her throat, saying 5 words that'd haunt me. I took it off, please. Her sister's chalkboard clattering to the floor, and Elwood Gantry smiling like the devil himself. Right then, I had a choice. Walk out with my tobacco and let history repeat itself, or step through that door and lose everything I had left. By dawn, we'd either be free or buried 6 feet under. Reckon I chose the hard road. Now, before I tell you what happened in that back office, you gotta understand something about Elwood Gantry. He wasn't from Texas, came down from Philadelphia after Appomattox with his spectacles and his ledgers, calling himself a territorial revenue officer. What that meant in plain English was, he bought up Confederate debts for pennies, then squeezed folks till they bled. His office sat above Henderson's general store, smelling of ink and leather and something else. Fear, maybe. I'd been avoiding the place for months, but a man needs tobacco, and Henderson's was the only store that still gave credit to old Confederate soldiers. I was counting out coins when I heard voices through the back door. A woman's voice, educated and careful, the kind of speech you don't hear much in a town like ours. Then that chalk sound, scrape, scrape, scrape. Desperate, my hand froze over them coins. See, my daughter Clara, she'd been sick with cholera back in '63 while I was at Vicksburg. The neighbor lady told me later that Clara had scratched at her bedroom door for hours, too weak to call out, begging for water. By the time anyone heard, it was too late. That chalk scraping sounded just like fingernails on wood. I pushed through that back door without thinking. What I saw there, well, it's burned in my memory like a brand. Marjorie Pritchett stood before Gantry's desk, her posture rigid as a rifle barrel, despite everything trying to break her. She was maybe 28, but the war had carved years into her face. Behind her, a girl, 16 at most, clutched a small chalkboard to her chest like a shield. The girl's mouth worked silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. Clyde Rafferty leaned against the doorframe, chewing tobacco. He'd fought for the Confederacy same as me, but when we lost, he'd switched sides faster than a weather vane in a tornado. Now he worked as Gantry's muscle, and the look in his eyes said he was enjoying this. Gantry adjusted his spectacles, voice smooth as snake oil. "Mrs. Pritchett, I'm a reasonable man. Your late husband's gambling debts, God rest his soul, now total $47.60 with accumulated interest. Surely you can appreciate that debts must be honored." Midge, that's what folks called her, placed a silver locket on his desk with shaken hands. "This was my mother's. It's worth $30 in San Antonio, maybe more, combined with the 15 I've brought. I don't deal in sentiment." Gantry didn't even glance at the locket. "I deal in legal tender. However," he stood, walked around the desk real slow, "there are alternative arrangements for a woman in your situation." The girl behind her started writing frantically on her board, holding it up. "No, we'll find another way." Gantry ignored her like she was furniture. "Your sister could work off the debt in Austin. The workhouse always needs—" "She's 16, Midge's voice cracked for the first time. "Old enough." Gantry's smile made my stomach turn. "Or perhaps you'd prefer to satisfy the debt yourself. My residence. Tonight. Alone." The air went out of that room. The girl's chalk scraped violent across the board. "Don't. Please don't." The sound cutting through me like a saber. Midge closed her eyes. Her fingers went to the faded blue ribbon at her collar, tied in a careful bow, the only pretty thing left on her. She started working the knot with trembling hands. "I took it off," she whispered. "The locket. Please, take it and let my sister go to our aunt in Fredericksburg. Just let her go." But Gantry heard what he wanted to hear. His hand reached for her wrist. That's when my three-fingered hand clamped down on his. The whole room froze. "Reckon the lady said no." My voice came out quiet. I hadn't spoke more than 10 words a day since the war ended, but it carried the weight of every choice I'd buried for 2 years. Gantry jerked back, spectacles cockeyed on his nose. This is a private matter, Drummond. Legal business. Didn't sound legal to me. Rafferty pushed off the wall, hand drifting toward the knife on his belt. Old man, you're making a mistake you can't afford. I kept my eyes on Gantry. I'm buying their debt. $47.60. I'm good for it. It was a lie. I had maybe $20 to my name, but my hand was already moving to my hip. Not for money, but for the Navy Colt I hadn't drawn since Appomattox. Gantry's face went white. Not 'cause of the gun, but 'cause I'd just made this public. In a town where reputation was currency, his had just been devalued. You're a fool, Drummond. His voice shook with rage. This town will know you harbored debt dodgers. You'll lose everything. I looked at the girl, Beatrice, I'd learn later, still clutching that chalkboard, hope and terror mixing in her dark eyes. I thought of Clara, of another girl I couldn't save. Then I reckon I'll lose it standing up. When I walked out of that office with two women who didn't belong to me by law or blood, every man on Main Street stopped to stare. Some shook their heads, some looked away, but every single one of them knew, by sunrise, there'd be hell to pay, and Elwood Gantry wasn't the forgiven type. My ranch sat 5 miles outside town, close enough to hear the church bell on Sunday, far enough that a man could pretend the war never happened. Adobe and timber, built back when Texas was still a republic, and a handshake meant something. The well never ran dry, the roof kept out most of the rain, and it was all I had left of the life I'd built before. The wagon ride out was silent, except for the creak of wheels and my horse's steady breathing. I kept checking behind us, hand never far from my gun. Midge sat rigid beside me, one arm wrapped tight around Beatrice. The girl stared at everything. The mesquite trees, the dried creek bed, the buzzards circling overhead, like she was memorizing the world in case it disappeared. When we rolled up to the house, my dog Grant came barking, a grizzled mutt I'd found half-starved after the war. He had 3 legs and 1 ear, and we suited each other fine. He barked once at the strangers, then looked at me. They're staying, I told him. He settled down, watchful but acceptant. Dogs got better instincts than most people. Inside, the place showed what it was, a bachelor's quarters. 1 table, 2 chairs, a cot in the corner. Walls bare except for one thing, a small tintype in a cedar frame. A girl about 12, serious eyes, hint of a smile that never got to grow up. Beatrice saw it first. She moved close, studied it, then pulled out a new piece of chalk. Rafferty must have slipped her one, and wrote, "Your daughter?" I nodded once. Didn't elaborate. Some pain don't need explainin'. I set out what I had. Cornbread from yesterday, water from the well, some salt pork that'd keep another day. You'll take the bed. I'll sleep in the barn with Grant. Midge's voice was strained, formal. Mr. Drummond, I must ask, why have you done this? We're complete strangers to you. I poured water into tin cups, hands moving through familiar motions. My girl died while I was at Vicksburg. Neighbor lady was supposed to check on her but didn't. Nobody there when she needed help. I set the cups down harder than I meant to. Couldn't live with that twice. The words fell heavy in the small room. Beatrice's chalk moved across her board. How much money do you really have? Smart girl. She'd caught the lie back in Gantry's office. I met her eyes. Enough to buy some time. Not enough to buy freedom. Midge's hands twisted in her lap. We'll leave at first light. Head to my aunt's place in Fredericksburg. You've done more than... You won't make it past the county line. I sat down heavy in my chair. Gantry's got men. They'll be watching the roads, the stage stops. He can't let this stand. Makes him look weak. Then what do you suggest? Her voice finally broke. We can't hide here forever. He'll bring the law. You'll lose your land, maybe worse. Why throw your life away for strangers? I stared into my water cup, seeing Clara's face reflected there like I always did. Ain't throwing it away. Just finally using it for something that matters. Beatrice was at the window now, not writing, just looking out at the darkening sky. Midge joined her, and I heard the sharp intake of breath. Grant barked, not his normal bark, but the warning kind. I was at the window in 3 steps, out past the barn, moving up the road like angry fireflies. Torches. 6, maybe 8. And voices carrying across the dry ground. Drummond, we know they're in there. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, old man. Send 'em out, and we'll forget this ever happened. I recognized the voices. Luke Brennan, who ran the livery, owed me $20 from before the war. Tom Phelps from the grain mill. I'd helped pull his wagon out of the mud last spring. Good men once. But debt and fear had a way of turning good men into something else. Midge grabbed Beatrice, pulled her from the window. There's a back door, we can run. You won't make 20 yards. I was already loading my rifle, hands steady from muscle memory. They'll have men around back by now. I pulled a small revolver from my belt, checked the cylinder, handed it to Midge. You know how to use this? She nodded, face pale as milk. Beatrice's chalk scraped frantically. We're sorry. This is our fault. I looked at her, really looked at her. 16 years old, couldn't speak, probably been invisible her whole life. But there was steel in those eyes. Silence didn't mean weak. Ain't your fault, I said quiet. Fault belongs to men who prey on women who can't fight back. That's where the blame sits. The torches were closer now. I could make out faces in the firelight. Brennan, Phelps, the blacksmith Keegan, and hanging back but definitely there. Clyde Rafferty, making sure this happened. I stepped onto the porch, rifle cradled casual-like in my arms. Not aimed yet, but the promise was clear. Luke, I called out. This ain't your fight. Go on home to Sarah and the kids. Brennan shifted uncomfortable. Ain't personal, Silas, but Gantry says those women are fugitives from legal debt. Says we got a duty to… Duty. I let the word hang there. We had a duty once, to the Confederacy. How'd that work out for us? Several men looked down at their boots. But Rafferty stepped forward, spitting tobacco juice near my porch steps. Confederacy's dead, old man. This is about territorial law now, and you're in violation. My hand tightened on the rifle. Behind me, through the window, I felt Midge and Beatrice watching. 2 women I barely knew. 2 women who shouldn't be my burden. But Clara's face was there, laid over Beatrice's like a ghost. That scratching sound echoed in my memory. Then I reckon, I said slow and clear, the law and I got ourselves a disagreement. The hammer on my rifle clicked back. The night air turned cold as iron. 6 torches against 1 old soldier with a 3-fingered hand and nothing left to lose. And then, riding up calm as Sunday church, came Marshal Oswin Tate with a folded piece of paper in his hand. When he unfolded it and started reading by torchlight, I knew my simple life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Marshal Oswin Tate was 42 years old, Northern appointed after Appomattox, and caught between 2 worlds he never quite fit into. He wasn't a cruel man, I'll give him that. He was the kind who believed order prevented chaos, even when the order itself was rotten. He rode past the mob like they weren't even there, tipped his hat to me with something like respect. Evening, Mr. Drummond. Wish this were a social call. Reckon it ain't. He unfolded that paper slow, deliberate. I've got a writ here from the Territorial Revenue Office. Says Mrs. Marjorie Pritchett and her ward, Beatrice Pritchett, are in default of legal debt totaling $47.60. Says they're to be remanded to Mr. Elwood Gantry's custody pending payment or… He paused, the words sticking in his throat. Or alternative arrangement. The air between us felt thick enough to choke on. That paper say anything about justice, Marshal? Or just law? Tate's jaw tightened. It says, I do my job or lose my badge, and without law, Silas, we're just animals tearing at each other. Some of us already are. Behind me the door opened. I didn't turn, but I knew. Midge had stepped out, Beatrice beside her. Damn stubborn women. I'd told 'em to stay inside. Midge's voice cut through the night, educated and clear. Marshal Tate, I'm Marjorie Pritchett. My late husband died at Chickamauga, fighting for Texas. His debt was $17, gambling losses I knew nothing about. Mr. Gantry has added fees, interest, and penalties until it's nearly 50. I've paid what I could. I've sold everything but the clothes on our backs. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did, twisted tight in her skirt. And still he demands more. Tonight he demanded I come to his residence, alone, as payment. The mob went quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when truth gets spoken out loud and can't be taken back. Brennan's torch lowered. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But Rafferty pushed forward, sneering. The word of a desperate widow. She'd say anything to dodge her debt. Marshal, this is... Beatrice stepped forward, holding up her chalkboard. Must have written it while inside. The letters were shaky but clear. He did the same to Mrs. Thompson and Consuela Sanchez. I saw the ledgers. That name, Thompson, it hit the crowd like a physical blow. Mrs. Thompson had hanged herself last spring. Folks said it was grief over her husband dying in the war. But there'd been whispers, the kind nobody wanted to prove true because proving it meant admitting we'd all stood by and let it happen. Marshal, Tate's hand went up. Silence in Rafferty. His eyes moved from the chalkboard to Beatrice's face, then to Midge's, then to mine. I saw something crack in him. Not break, but crack, like ice on a pond in early spring. Mr. Drummond, he said careful, I can give you till morning. Let tempers cool. But come dawn, I'll have to enforce this writ or turn in my badge. That's the only choice I've got. No, Marshal. I lowered my rifle, not surrendering, just making space for words to land harder. I bought their debt, $47.60. I'm good for it. You got that in hand? Cash money? I got my word. Used to be that was enough in Texas. Tate's eyes narrowed. Gantry won't accept your word. He'll want cash or collateral, property. The words came out before I could stop him. Then he can have my land. Midge gasped behind me. No, Mr. Drummond, you can't. But I wasn't looking at her. I was looking at those faces in the torchlight, men I'd known for years, men who'd forgotten what they used to stand for. She ain't property, I said, and my voice carried across that yard like a judge's verdict. Not while I'm breathing. And if losing everything I got left is what it costs to prove that, then that's what dignity's worth. Silence. Then Luke Brennan dropped his torch, just let it fall to the dirt and stomped it out with his boot. I ain't part of this no more. Tom Phelps followed. Then Keegan the blacksmith. 3 men turning away. Not many, but enough to crack the mob's certainty. Rafferty spat tobacco juice, furious. You're all fools. Gantry's gonna own this whole county, and you're choosing the losing side. He turned to Tate. Marshal, you gonna let this stand? Tate folded the writ, tucked it slow into his coat. I'm giving Mr. Drummond till noon tomorrow to present payment or collateral to Mr. Gantry at his office. If he defaults, I enforce the writ. That's the law. It wasn't justice, but it was time. Rafferty cursed, but even he backed down. The mob dispersed, torches fading into the darkness like angry fireflies dying out. When they were gone, Midge turned to me, and for the first time since I'd met her, tears broke through that careful composure. You shouldn't have done that. Your land. It's all you have left. I got more than land. I looked through the window at Clara's picture, small and serious in its cedar frame. I got a chance to do right this time. Beatrice held up her board, just 2 words. Thank you. Simple, profound, worth more than any deed. I nodded once, then turned toward the barn. But Midge's hand caught my arm, the damaged one, the one with missing fingers. She didn't flinch from it. We'll find a way, she said. I swear we will. I wanted to believe her, but belief is a luxury men like me can't afford. I didn't sleep that night. Spent the hours in the barn counting what I had, $23 in a tobacco tin, a deed to 20 acres, 3 horses, and a dozen head of cattle, not nearly enough to satisfy a man like Gantry. And when dawn broke pink and gold over Texas, I knew the truth. By noon, I'd be signing away everything I'd built. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Clyde Rafferty was riding hard to Gantry's house with a plan that would change the whole game. And by morning, the trap would be set tighter than we ever imagined. Dawn found me at the kitchen table, my deed spread out flat beside a half-empty coffee cup. 20 acres, clear title. My father had staked this land back in '39 before Texas was even a state. He'd died defending it from Comanche raiders when I was 17. I'd held it through drought, through war, through Clara's death and everything that came after. By noon, it had belonged to Elwood Gantry. The door creaked. Midge stepped out from the bedroom, hair unpinned, exhaustion carved into her face. She'd been awake, too. I'd heard her moving around, whispering to Beatrice. "Coffee's still warm," I said. She poured herself a cup, sat across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Just two people staring at the end of something. "Tell me about her," Midge said finally, nodding toward Clara's picture. "Your daughter." I hadn't talked about Clara in 2 years, hadn't said her name out loud. But something about the morning light, about knowing this might be my last day in this house, loosened the words. She was 12 when the cholera came, smart as a whip, could read better than most grown men. She wanted to be a teacher. I traced the rim of my cup. I was at Vicksburg when it happened. Got the letter 3 weeks later. By then, she was already in the ground. Midge's hand moved across the table, stopped just short of mine. "It wasn't your fault. Wasn't anybody's fault. But that don't make her less dead." Beatrice emerged then, carrying her chalkboard. She'd been writing on it. I could see eraser marks, layers of words built up and wiped away. She held it up. "Why do you keep helping us? We're nothing to you." I looked at that girl, 16 years old, never spoke a word her whole life, but those eyes saw everything. "You remind me that there's still something worth losing everything for." She stared at me for a long moment, then wrote, "I'm sorry. Ain't nothing to be sorry for." But she was already writing again, faster now, like words had been dammed up inside her. "I write everything down. In Gantry's office. When I deliver laundry, I've been watching him for months." I sat forward. "What do you mean, watching?" She flipped the board, wrote on the back, "He hurts women." I started keeping track. Dates, names, amounts he charges versus what they actually owe. Midge's cup clattered against the table. "Beatrice, why didn't you tell me?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. She wrote, "I wanted to protect you. If he knew I was watching." A sound cut through the morning, horse hooves, coming fast. Grant erupted into barking, the kind that raises the hair on your neck. I was at the window in 2 steps, hand on my gun, Clyde Rafferty, riding hard, alone. "Stay inside," I told the women, and stepped onto the porch. Rafferty reined up, his horse blowing hard. He looked behind him, nervous, then at me. "We ain't got much time." "What are you doing here, Clyde?" He swung down from his horse, moved closer, voice low. "Gantry knows about the girl's notes." My blood went cold. "How?" I told him. He saw my hand move toward my gun. "Wait, just listen. I've been helping her. Me. I'm the one who gave her access to his files, told her when he'd be out of the office." "Why in God's name?" "Because my brother died in a Union prison camp while carpetbaggers like Gantry got rich off our misery." His voice cracked. "I've been waiting for someone with the stones to stand up to him. When you walked into that office yesterday, I knew." "Knew what?" "That maybe Texas still had some fight left in her." I studied his face, looking for the lie. Didn't find one. Last night, after the standoff, I went to Gantry. Told him about the girl's notes, but I told him wrong. Said she kept 'em hidden at your place. Figured if he came looking here instead of realizing she's got 'em memorized." "You bought us time." "Maybe. But here's the worst news. Gantry ain't just taken your land. He's filed charges with the territorial court. Harboring fugitives, obstruction of revenue collection, threatening an officer with a deadly weapon. Judge Clayton's signing the warrant this morning." The world tilted. "Warrant for what?" "Your arrest. 6 months labor plus seizure of all assets." Rafferty grabbed my shoulder. "Silas, if you sign over that land at noon, you're still going to jail. He's going to take everything and bury you besides." Behind me, I heard Midge's sharp intake of breath. She'd come to the door, heard it all. "There's gotta be a way," she started. "There is." Rafferty glanced back down the road. "But it ain't legal and it ain't safe." "Tell me." "My brother, before he died, he told me about an old law. From back when Texas was a republic, community arbitration. If 12 citizens bring a grievance, they can override territorial court. It's still on the books, just nobody's used it in 20 years. 12 citizens. I let out a bitter laugh. "Clyde, Half the town watched that mob come for me last night. You think I can get 12 people to— You got 3 already. Me, Luke Brennan, and his wife Sarah. She's Mrs. Thompson's sister. That stopped me cold. Sarah knows what Gantry did to her sister. She's been carrying that weight for months. When she heard about last night, she came to me, said she'd sign anything, testify to anything, if it meant stopping him. Midge stepped forward. What do we need to do? Get to town. Talk to folks before Gantry does. We got— He pulled out a pocket watch. 4 hours till noon. If we can get 12 signatures and present them to Marshal Tate before that warrant's executed, we got a shot. And if we can't? Rafferty's face was grim. Then you sign over your land and go to jail. And those women? He looked at Midge and Beatrice. Gantry gets them anyway. Grant was still barking frantic now. I looked down the road and saw it. Dust rising, multiple riders. That'll be the marshal, Rafferty said, coming to serve the warrant early. Gantry must have pushed him. 4 hours had just become minutes. Midge grabbed Beatrice's hand. We'll go out the back, head to town on foot through the creek bed. No, I was already moving saddling my horse. We all go. Together. If they're gonna take me, they'll do it in town, in front of everybody. Let's make Gantry's justice as public as possible. Rafferty swung back onto his horse. You're either the bravest man I know or the dumbest. Probably both. We rode into town with the sun climbing higher, Marshal Tate and 2 deputies right behind us. Main Street was already filling. Word spreads fast in small towns, especially when it's about a man's ruin. Gantry stood on the steps of his office, watch in hand, smiling like the devil at Sunday service. And as Tate unfolded that warrant and started reading my charges out loud for all to hear, I saw faces in the crowd, some ashamed, some curious, some hungry for the spectacle. But somewhere in that crowd was our only hope. 12 people with enough courage left to remember what Texas used to stand for. Main Street never looked so crowded on a weekday morning. Folks lined the boardwalks, hung out of second-story windows, gathered in tight clusters, whispering behind their hands. Marshal Tate stood on the courthouse steps, warrant in hand, voice carrying across the square. Silas Drummond, you are hereby charged with obstruction of territorial revenue collection, harboring fugitives from legal debt, and threatening an officer with deadly force. You are to be remanded to custody pending trial, with sentence of 6 months' labor and seizure of property. The words fell like hammer blows. I sat tall in my saddle, didn't dismount. Beside me, Midge and Beatrice on my old mare, Rafferty on his roan. We made quite a picture. A crippled old soldier, a deaf widow, a mute girl, and a turncoat. The kind of picture that'd be talked about for years, one way or another. Marshal, I said quiet, before you take me in, I got a request. Tate shifted, uncomfortable. This ain't a negotiation, Silas. Ain't asking for one, just asking for what the law allows. A chance to speak before I'm judged. Gantry stepped forward from the crowd, spectacles catching the sun. The warrant is clear, Marshal. Execute it. But Tate hesitated. See, that's the thing about good men in bad positions. Sometimes, when you give them an out, they'll take it. Territorial code allows for a statement of grievance before custody, Tate said. 5 minutes, Silas. That's all I can give you. I swung down from my horse, every joint complaining. Walked to the center of the street where everyone could see. Midge and Beatrice climbed down too, stood beside me. The crowd pressed closer. Most of you know me, I started, voice rough but steady. Silas Drummond. Fought at Shiloh, Vicksburg, Chickamauga, lost 2 fingers and a daughter. Came home to nothing but this land and a memory of what Texas used to be. Faces in the crowd. Some nodded, some looked away. Yesterday, I walked into Elwood Gantry's office for tobacco and heard a sound I ain't heard since my daughter died. A girl scratching for help. A woman being told her body was payment for debt her dead husband left behind. Gantry's face went red. Those are slanderous. I'm speaking, Mr. Gantry. Your turn'll come. Tate held up a hand, silencing Gantry. Continue, Silas. I turned to face the crowd full on. I ain't a rich man. I ain't educated. But I know the difference between law and justice. And what I saw in that office, what Mrs. Pritchett here endured, that wasn't justice. That was a predator wearing a legal coat. Midge stepped forward then, and I saw the tremble in her legs, the terror in her eyes. But her voice came out clear. My name is Marjorie Pritchett. My husband, Benjamin Pritchett, died at Chickamauga fighting for Texas. He left a $17 gambling debt. In 18 months, Mr. Gantry has turned that into $47 through fees and interest. Yesterday, he told me the only way to clear it was— Her voice caught. She looked at Beatrice, who gripped her hand tight. Was to come to his residence, alone, for the night. The crowd erupted in whispers. Sarah Brennan pushed through the mass of people, her face streaked with tears. My sister Emily Thompson paid Gantry the same way. And when she couldn't live with what she'd done, she hanged herself in her kitchen. The whispers turned to murmurs, the murmurs to angry voices. Gantry's lawyer, a thin man from Austin, stepped forward. These are unsubstantiated accusations from women in desperate circumstances. The law is clear. Beatrice moved then, walked straight to Marshall Tate, held up her chalkboard. She'd written something long, must have prepared it during the ride. I worked in Gantry's office, delivered laundry for months. I saw the ledgers. He charges women triple what he charges men. He erases payments. He keeps 2 books, one for the territory, one for himself. I wrote it all down. Tate read it, his face draining of color. You have proof of this? Beatrice nodded, tapped her head, then her heart. She's got it memorized, Rafferty called out. Every transaction, every falsified entry. I helped her get access. Been feeding her information for 6 months. The crowd swung toward Rafferty, shocked. I switched sides once to survive, Rafferty said, voice carrying. Figured I'd switch back when it mattered. This matters. Gantry's composure cracked. This is absurd. The word of a mute girl and a traitor against a territorial officer. Against a dozen women, Sarah interrupted. Because my sister wasn't the only one. Consuela Sanchez, Widow O'Brien, Emma Frost. I can name them. They'll speak if someone asks. Marshall Tate looked at that warrant in his hand like it was burning him. Mr. Gantry, these are serious allegations, which have nothing to do with the charges against Drummond. He drew a weapon on me. He harbored fugitives. Those are facts. Actually, an old voice cut through and the crowd parted. Judge Theodore Moss, retired, 83 years old, walked with a cane through the street. He'd been the circuit judge back when Texas was still a republic, before the war, before everything changed. Actually, Mr. Gantry, there's a law you might have forgotten about. Community Arbitration Statute, 1838. If 12 citizens of good standing bring grievance against a territorial ruling, they can convene an emergency tribunal. Overrides territorial court pending state review. My heart jumped. That was the law Rafferty mentioned. That law is archaic, Gantry's lawyer sputtered. Hasn't been invoked in 22 years, Judge Moss said. I presided over the last one, saved a man from being hanged for horse theft when it turned out the horse was his to begin with. Law's still valid. And where, Gantry sneered, will you find 12 citizens willing to stand against territorial authority? Luke Brennan stepped forward. I'll sign. His wife Sarah. I'll sign. Rafferty. Already said I would. Widow O'Brien. Voice shaken. I'll sign. One by one they came. Tom Phelps. Keegan the blacksmith. Old Mrs. McCready, whose farm Gantry took last year. The baker. The seamstress. 11. The crowd held its breath. One more. Just one more. Marshal Oswin Tate stood there, warrant still in his hand, badge gleaming on his chest. His face was torn. Duty versus conscience, order versus justice. Then slowly, deliberately, he unpinned that badge, set it on the courthouse steps. I'll sign, he said, as a private citizen. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some cursing, everyone pressing closer. Gantry's face went from red to purple to white as limestone. His lawyer was already mounting his horse, clearing out before the storm hit. And as Judge Moss declared the tribunal convened for 2 o'clock that very afternoon, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Gantry, leaning close to Deacon William Hayes, whispering urgent and dark. The deacon's face went pale, but he nodded. Whatever Gantry was planning, it wasn't surrender, and by the time that tribunal sat down, the real fight would just be beginning. The next 3 hours passed like a fever dream. Judge Moss commandeered the town meeting hall, bigger than the courthouse, could fit near 200 people if they squeezed. Word spread faster than prairie fire. By 1 o'clock, folks were streaming in from outlying farms, some riding 10 miles just to witness it. We gathered in the back room, me, Midge, Beatrice, the 12 who'd signed. Rafferty laid out what we had. Beatrice's memory of transactions, Sarah's sister's diary, testimony from 3 women willing to speak. It was something, but was it enough? Problem is proof, Judge Moss said, tapping his cane on the floor. The girl's memory is compelling, but Gantry's got ledgers, official territorial documents, his word against hers. Beatrice's chalk scraped. I saw 2 sets of books. One in his safe, one he shows the territory. Can you get to that safe? Tate asked. She shook her head. Combination lock. Only he knows it. We sat in heavy silence. So close, but not close enough. Midge was pacing, her mind working. There has to be something. Some way to prove. She stopped sudden, turned to Beatrice. The laundry. You delivered his laundry for months. Did you ever clean his residence? Beatrice nodded. Did you see papers there? Documents he kept at home? The girl's eyes widened. Her chalk flew. Yes, in his study, letters, receipts. He burns them every month, but I saw. What did you see? I asked. Letters from Austin, from other territorial officers. Talking about arrangements and splitting proceeds. This isn't just him. It's bigger. The room went dead quiet. Sweet Jesus, Brennan breathed. He's part of a ring. Rafferty slammed his fist on the table. That's why he's so confident. He's got protection. Even if we expose him here, they'll move him somewhere else, start over. Then we need more than local justice, Judge Moss said. We need the state involved, the governor's office. That'll take weeks, Sarah said. Months, maybe. And in the meantime, a knock at the door cut her off. We all froze. Tate's hand went to where his gun used to be, old habit, then dropped. Who is it? Brennan called. William Hayes, the deacon. I was on my feet, hand on my Navy Colt. That son of a bitch works for Gantry. Wait, Midge's hand on my arm. Let's hear him. He's the one who... I know what he is, but hear him. Brennan opened the door a crack. Deacon Hayes stood there, hat in hand, face gray as old ash. He looked 20 years older than he had that morning. I need to speak, he said. Please. Against my better judgment, we let him in. He stood in the center of the room, wouldn't meet nobody's eyes. I came to confess. Little late for that, Rafferty growled. I know. His voice cracked. I've been helping Gantry for 18 months, recruiting women who needed help, steering them to his office. He'd reduce my church's debt every time I brought him someone vulnerable. I told myself I was helping the church, helping the community. Sarah Brennan stood, face twisted with rage. You sent my sister to him. Hayes flinched like she'd struck him. Yes. And when she killed herself, you said nothing. I said nothing. Tears ran down his face now. I'm a coward and a traitor to everything I ever preached. But I can't. I won't stay silent anymore. He reached into his coat. Every man in the room tensed. He pulled out a leather journal, set it on the table. Gantry gave me this, said to keep records of women I sent his way, amounts they owed, dates they paid. He wanted insurance, he said. In case anyone ever accused him, he'd have proof it was all voluntary. Beatrice grabbed the journal, started flipping through pages. Her hands shook. Names, Hayes continued. Dates, amounts, 16 women over 18 months. And, he pulled out folded papers. These are letters between Gantry and 3 other territorial officers. They're running the same scheme in 4 counties, splitting the profits. Judge Moss took the letters with trembling hands, read in silence. His face went hard as iron. This is conspiracy, racketeering. This goes to the governor. Gantry doesn't just lose his position. He goes to prison. They all do. I stared at the deacon. Why now? Why come forward? Hayes looked at me finally, eyes hollow. Because this morning, Gantry told me what he's planning if he loses the tribunal. He's got men riding to burn your ranch tonight, kill your livestock. Make sure even if you keep your land, there's nothing left worth keeping. And he told me, his voice broke. He told me to make sure the women didn't survive the fire. The room exploded. That murdering. We need to get deputies. There ain't time. Tate's voice cut through. How many men? 4, maybe 5. They're riding out at sundown, soon as the tribunal starts. Figure everyone'll be here in town. I looked at the clock on the wall. 1:45. 15 minutes till the tribunal. 2 hours till sundown. Midge grabbed my arm. Silas, we have to… I know. My mind was racing. Tate, you got men you trust. Former deputies? 3, maybe 4 who'd ride. Get 'em. Send 'em to my ranch now. Tell 'em to be ready. Tate nodded, already moving. Beatrice held up her board. What about the tribunal? Judge Moss stood, all 83 years of him drawn up straight. The tribunal proceeds. With or without Mr. Drummond present, we've got evidence now, real evidence. Gantry's finished whether he knows it yet or not. I looked at Midge and Beatrice. You two stay here, present the case. You don't need me for that. The hell we don't, Midge said, and the curse coming from her formal lips shocked everyone. You think I'm letting you ride out there alone? Midge, I've spent 2 years surviving. I'm done surviving. Time to fight. She turned to Beatrice. You can do this. Present the evidence. Tell them everything. Beatrice's eyes went wide with terror. She wrote frantically, I can't. I'm mute. They won't listen. Sarah Brennan stepped forward, knelt beside the girl. Then I'll speak for you. You write, I'll read. Every word, every name, we'll make them listen. Judge Moss nodded. The rest of us will stand witness. Gantry won't dare lay a hand on the girl with 200 people watching. I wanted to argue. Wanted to lock both women in a room somewhere safe, but I saw Midge's face. She'd made her choice. And maybe, after everything, she'd earned the right to make it. All right, but we leave Rafferty here too. Someone Gantry fears needs to stay with the girl. Rafferty started to protest, then saw the sense. Fine. But you come back, Drummond. Don't make me regret switching sides. Deacon Hayes spoke up, voice small. I'll ride with you. It's the least I can do. I studied him. Broken man trying to piece himself back together. You know how to shoot? I'm a man of God. That ain't what I asked. Yes, I can shoot. Then get a rifle. At 2 o'clock sharp, Judge Moss called the tribunal to order. The meeting hall was packed so tight folks were standing on each other's toes. Gantry sat at the front table, his lawyer beside him, smiling like he'd already won. Beatrice stood at the other table, Sarah Brennan beside her, that leather journal open in front of them. And as the judge's gavel fell and the questions began, I was riding hard out of town with Midge, Hayes, and 4 men I barely knew, racing the sun toward a confrontation that would end in either justice or blood. Maybe both. We pushed the horses hard, 5 miles in 20 minutes, leaving a dust trail visible from town. The sun hung low and angry, turning the sky the color of old blood. My ranch sat quiet as we approached, too quiet. Grant should have been barking. I held up a fist. We stopped 50 yards out. Could be they ain't here yet, Tate's man, a former deputy named Cortez, whispered. Or they're waiting for us, Midge said. I scanned the property. Barn doors hung open, corral gates swinging loose, and there, movement in the window of my house. They're inside, I said, probably looking for anything valuable before they torch it. Hayes gripped his rifle so hard his knuckles went white. What do we do? We end this. I swung down from my horse. Cortez, you and Davies circle around back. Hayes, you're with me at the front. Midge, I'm coming with you. Like hell. She pulled out the little revolver I'd given her 2 nights ago. I said I'm done surviving. Now move. No time to argue. We spread out. As we closed in, I heard voices from inside. Rough laughter, the sound of drawers being emptied. 4 men, maybe 5, just like Hayes said. I kicked the door open, gun raised. Get out. The men inside froze. I recognized two of them, drifters who'd been in and out of the territorial jail. The others were strangers, hired guns with dead eyes. One of them, big fellow with a scar across his jaw, grinned. Well now, thought you'd be in town watching your world fall apart. Disappointed? Nah, makes it easier. Gantry said no witnesses anyway. His hand moved toward his gun. I shot him in the shoulder before he cleared leather. The room erupted. Cortez and Davies crashed through the back. Hayes fired wild but loud. Midge dropped behind the table, shots cracking over her head. It was over in 30 seconds. 3 men down, wounded, not dead. 1 fled out the window. The 5th surrendered, hands high. I stood over the scarred man, pressing my boot to his wounded shoulder. He screamed, "Who hired you?" "Go to hell." I pressed harder. "Who?" "Gantry, Elwood Gantry. Paid us $50 to burn this place and make sure the women didn't walk out." Hayes stepped forward, rifle still raised. "You were gonna murder them? In cold blood?" "It's just business, preacher. It's the devil's work." Hayes's finger tightened on the trigger. I grabbed the barrel, pushed it down. "No, we do this legal. They testify what Gantry hired them for, and he hangs proper." Meanwhile, back in town, the tribunal had reached its breaking point. Beatrice had stood for an hour, writing on board after board while Sarah read aloud. Every transaction, every falsified entry, every woman's name. The crowd had gone from skeptical to silent to seething. Then Sarah opened Hayes's journal and read the worst of it. Names, dates, what each woman had been forced to do, how much Gantry had profited. When she read Emily Thompson's name, her voice finally broke, but she kept going. Gantry's lawyer tried every legal trick: objections, procedural challenges, demands for dismissal. Judge Moss overruled them all. Finally, when the evidence was laid bare, Gantry himself stood. "This is a travesty," he said, voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Hearsay from a mute girl, a coerced confession from a guilt-ridden deacon, testimony from women who owe me money and would say anything to escape their obligations. This tribunal has no legal standing." "Actually," Judge Moss interrupted, "it has every legal standing. Republic of Texas statute, still in effect, gives this tribunal the authority to suspend territorial rulings pending state review. And based on the evidence presented," he held up Hayes's journal and the letters, "I'm declaring all debts held by Elwood Gantry null and void, pending investigation by the state attorney general." The crowd erupted in cheers. Gantry's face went purple. "You senile old fool! I have connections in Austin, the territorial governor himself." "We'll be receiving these letters," Judge Moss said coldly, "along with a full report of your activities. You're finished, Mr. Gantry." "The hell I am!" Gantry lunged for the documents on the table. Rafferty stepped in front of him, knife drawn. "Try it." Gantry froze, then slowly backed away. But his eyes, they were the eyes of a cornered animal. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Not by half. You think you've won? My men are burning Drummond's ranch right now. And when those women come back, if they come back, they'll have nothing. Nothing." The room went silent. Beatrice's chalk scraped frantically. Midge went with him to the ranch. Sarah grabbed the girl's shoulders. "What? Why didn't you say—" "Because we needed the tribunal to proceed," Judge Moss said grimly. "And now we need to pray Silas Drummond is as good with that gun as folks say." The crowd surged toward the doors, but Gantry's laugh stopped them. "Too late. Even if they stop the fire, what then? Drummond's land is worthless without a house, without livestock. He's got nothing to mortgage, nothing to sell. He'll starve by winter, and those women with him." Actually, a new voice from the back of the hall. The crowd parted. An older woman stepped through, well-dressed, carrying herself like she owned the ground she walked on. Mrs. Adelaide Whitmore owned the largest ranch in 3 counties, widowed, wealthy, and nobody's fool. "Actually, Mr. Gantry, Mr. Drummond's land borders mine. I've been trying to buy water access to his creek for 5 years. If his house is gone and he needs capital to rebuild, I'd be happy to purchase a 20-year easement, say $300. The room gasped. That was more than the land was worth. And, she continued, I'll loan him breeding stock, 10 head of cattle, 2 horses, in exchange for half the calves for 3 years. That's standard ranching practice. He'll be on his feet by spring. Gantry stared at her, speechless. Mrs. Whitmore smiled coldly. You see, Mr. Gantry, you're not the only one who understands contracts. The difference is, mine don't require women to sell their bodies. The crowd roared approval. Judge Moss's gavel fell. This tribunal finds in favor of the petitioners. All debts voided. Mr. Gantry, you are hereby stripped of territorial authority pending state investigation. Marshal, he caught himself. Mr. Tate, I'm temporarily deputizing you. Hold this man until the state marshal arrives from Austin. Tate stepped forward, no badge but plenty of authority. Gladly. Gantry backed toward the door. You can't. I have rights. So did Emily Thompson, Sarah Brennan said quietly. But she's dead. And you're the reason why. Just as Tate reached for Gantry's arm, the doors burst open. Cortez stumbled in, bloody and breathless. Drummond's got the arsonists, all of them alive. But there's a problem. Gantry's got a 6th man out there, a sniper, hidden in the rocks. He's got Drummond and Mrs. Pritchett pinned down at the ranch. Says he won't leave till Gantry walks free. The tribunal exploded into chaos. Beatrice's board clattered to the floor, and Gantry, seeing his last card to play, smiled like the devil himself. The standoff at my ranch had turned into something out of a nightmare. We had 4 arsonists tied up in my barn, all of them bleeding and talking. But the 5th man, the one who'd escaped through the window, he hadn't run far. He'd circled around to the rocks above the creek, maybe 200 yards out, with a rifle that could punch through a man at twice that distance. He'd already proved it, putting a round through my water barrel when I tried to move toward the house. We were pinned. Me, Midge, Hayes, and 2 of Tate's men crouched behind the barn, the sun sinking lower, shadows growing long. He called out about 10 minutes ago, I told Cortez when he returned from town, breathless. Said he won't leave till Gantry walks free. Said he's got all night and plenty of ammunition. Gantry ain't walking free, Cortez said. The tribunal stripped him of everything, found him guilty on all counts. A wild hope surged through me. Beatrice, Midge's sister, is she? She's fine. Sarah Brennan spoke for her. The whole town heard the truth. He paused. But when we left, Gantry was trying to negotiate, said if they let him go, he'd call off his sniper. And are they considering it? Midge's voice was tight. Judge Moss and Rafferty are holding firm. But some folks, they're scared. They know if you die out here, Gantry walks anyway. No witnesses to the murder for hire. I looked at the rocks where the sniper hid. Couldn't see him, but I felt his rifle pointed at us, patient and cold. What's his name? I asked. The shooter. Don't know. None of the other men would say. They're protecting him, which means he's the real professional. The others were just muscle. Hayes spoke up, voice shaken. There might be another way. We all looked at him. Gantry hired these men through someone local, someone who knew the territory, knew your ranch, knew when the tribunal would keep everyone in town. He swallowed hard. I think I know who. Who? Deputy Frank Howell. Tate's former deputy, the one who didn't sign the petition. He's been on Gantry's payroll for months, longer than me. I heard them talking once about insurance if things went wrong. My blood ran cold. Where is Howell now? That's the thing. He left town right after the tribunal started, said he had business in the county seat, but he headed west, not east. West was toward my ranch. Son of a bitch, Cortez breathed. He's up there. He's the sniper. It made terrible sense. Howell knew how to shoot. Former Army sharpshooter at Antietam. He knew the land, and he'd have reason to protect Gantry. If Gantry fell, he'd fall with him. All right, I checked my ammunition. Then we know who we're dealing with. Don't matter who he is if he's got us pinned, Davies said. It matters, Midge said quietly, because it means he's desperate, and desperate men make mistakes. I looked at her, this woman I'd known less than 3 days who'd somehow become something more than a stranger. What are you thinking? Howell's protecting Gantry because if Gantry talks, Howell hangs. But if Gantry's already finished, if everyone in town knows what they did, Then Howell's got nothing left to protect. So we convince him Gantry's done for. More than that. Her eyes were sharp now, tactical. We offer him a way out. Testify against Gantry, and he gets a reduced sentence. Stay loyal, and he hangs alone. You think he'll buy it? I think he's up in those rocks right now wondering if Gantry would do the same for him. And I think the answer is no. I looked at Hayes. You know Howell? Think he'd listen? Hayes nodded slowly. He's got a daughter, 7 years old. Lives with his sister in Galveston since his wife died. He sends her money every month. His voice dropped. He won't want to hang and leave her with nothing. Then that's our play. I cupped my hands around my mouth, called out toward the rocks. Howell! Frank Howell! I know it's you up there. Silence. Then, Drummond, you're smarter than you look. His voice echoed off the rocks, hard to pinpoint exactly where. The tribunal's over, Frank. Gantry's stripped of authority. They've got his ledgers, his letters, everything. He's finished. Then let him go. Let him ride out of town, and I'll let you live. Can't do that, Frank. He's under arrest. State marshal's coming from Austin. But here's the thing. I let it hang. You don't have to go down with him. The hell I don't. I'm accessory to everything. Not if you testify. Judge Moss has authority to grant clemency in exchange for testimony. You tell them everything. Who Gantry paid, who he worked with, how the network operates. You might see 5 years instead of a rope. Long silence. Then, why would I trust you? Because, Midge called out, surprising me, you're not a murderer yet, Mr. Howell. You haven't pulled that trigger. You can still walk away from this as a man who made bad choices but chose right in the end. For your daughter's sake, choose right. The silence stretched so long I thought we'd lost him. Then his voice came back, different now, strained, breaking. What about Gantry? What happens to him? He faces justice, real justice. Not a bullet, but a trial, prison. Everything he did, brought to light. He'll try to take me down with him. Let him try. Your testimony puts him away for 20 years, his word against yours, and you're the one cooperating. Another long pause, then a figure stood up in the rocks. Rifle held high, not aimed. I'm coming down. Don't shoot. Cortez and Davies kept their rifles trained on him as he picked his way down the rocky slope. When he reached flat ground, I could see his face, drawn, exhausted, a man who'd been carrying weight too long. He dropped his rifle at my feet. I want it in writing, he said. The clemency deal. I want it witnessed and signed before I say a word. You'll get it, I said. But you ride back to town with us, now, and you tell Judge Moss everything. He nodded, broken. Everything. We rode back into town just as sunset painted the sky purple and gold. The meeting hall was still packed. Nobody had left, everyone waiting for word. When we walked in with Howell in custody and the 4 arsonists tied to horses behind us, the crowd erupted. Gantry, still held by Rafferty and 3 other men, went pale as a ghost. Frank? His voice cracked. What did you— I'm done, Elwood. Howell's voice was flat, dead. I'm done protecting you. I'm done pretending this was business. You're a predator, and I helped you hunt. Judge Moss stood. Mr. Howell, are you prepared to testify to the full extent of Mr. Gantry's operations? Every detail, every name, every dollar. And the murders? Mrs. Thompson? Howell's face twisted. Gantry didn't pull the trigger, but he killed her just the same, broke her till she couldn't see another way out. I watched it happen and did nothing. The crowd's anger turned to something colder. Grief and disgust mixed together. Gantry lunged toward Howell, but Rafferty hauled him back. You're a traitor. I made you. I gave you everything. You gave me guilt and blood money, Howell shouted back. And I got a daughter who deserves better than a hanged father. Judge Moss's gavel fell. Order. Deputy Howell, you will remain in custody pending formal testimony. Mr. Gantry, you are remanded to territorial custody until the state marshal arrives. This tribunal is adjourned. But before anyone could move, Beatrice pushed through the crowd. She ran straight to Midge, threw her arms around her sister. No, her mother. The secret I'd figured out but never spoken. And as they held each other, Midge's tears finally came, 2 years of holding strong, finally breaking open in relief. As the crowd filed out into the purple evening, Mrs. Whitmore approached me, holding a contract. "Mr. Drummond, about that easement and the livestock loan, shall we finalize the terms?" I looked at Midge and Beatrice, still holding each other, and realized something had changed. This wasn't just about my land anymore. It was about three broken people finding something worth rebuilding for. But there was still one question hanging in the air, one truth Beatrice had been carrying alone. And come morning, it would have to be spoken out loud. That night, nobody slept much. The state marshal arrived from Austin at midnight, a hard man named Coleman who'd fought Comanches before the war and carpetbaggers after. He took one look at Hayes's journal, read 3 pages of letters, and locked Gantry in the territorial jail with irons on both hands. "He'll face trial in Austin," Coleman said, "along with the other officers named in these letters. You folks did the state a service. But justice don't always feel like victory." I sat on my porch, what was left of it, watching the stars wheel overhead. The arsonists had gotten as far as soaking the east wall with kerosene before we stopped them. Another 5 minutes and everything would have burned. Footsteps on the dirt. Midge, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She sat beside me without asking, and we drank in silence for a while. "Beatrice told me," she said finally, "that you figured it out. About her being my daughter, not my sister. Wasn't hard to see, once I looked. She's got your eyes. Your way of tilting her head when she's thinking. I was 17 when she was born. Union deserters during the war. Her voice caught. My father wanted to send her to an orphanage, said no man would marry a woman with that kind of shame. So we told everyone she was my sister, born late to my mother before she died. And Beatrice never knew? She knew something wasn't right, but we never spoke it." Midge set down her cup. "Until tonight, I told her everything, the truth of who her father was, why I raised her the way I did." "How'd she take it?" "She wrote," Midge's voice broke. "She wrote, 'You're still my mother. You always were. The name doesn't matter.' I let that settle between us, heavy and holy." "What will you do now?" I asked. "You're free of the debt. Could go anywhere." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "Mrs. Whitmore's offer, the one about you needing help rebuilding. She mentioned you'd need someone to keep books, manage accounts." "She did. I was a school teacher before the war. I'm good with numbers." "I know you are. And Beatrice is good with horses. I've watched her these past days. Animals trust her because she's quiet." "They do." Midge's hand found mine, the damaged one with missing fingers. She didn't flinch from it. "I'm asking if there's room here. For us. Not as charity, but as partners. We work, we earn our keep, and maybe—" She stopped, afraid to finish. "Maybe what?" "Maybe broken things can be mended if you got enough people to hold the pieces." I looked at this woman, deaf, widowed, carrying secrets that would have crushed most people, and saw more strength than any soldier I'd served with. "There's room," I said. "More than room." Morning came with a surprise none of us expected. The whole town showed up at my ranch, not to gawk, but to help. Luke Brennan brought lumber. Tom Phelps came with his wagon full of tools. Mrs. Whitmore arrived with her ranch hands and enough supplies to rebuild twice over. Even Judge Moss came, too old to swing a hammer but sharp enough to oversee the work. And Beatrice, she stood in the center of it all, watching the community that had ignored her suffering now working to build her a home. She pulled out her chalkboard, wrote something, and held it up high. "Thank you for seeing us." Sarah Brennan, reading over her shoulder, started crying. Then Mrs. McCready, then half the women there. Because that's what it was about, wasn't it? Not just debt or justice or law. It was about being seen, being heard, mattering. By noon, we had walls framed. By sunset, a roof going up. By the time the stars came out, my ranch looked more alive than it had in years. 3 weeks later, the state trial concluded in Austin. Elwood Gantry, 20 years hard labor. 3 territorial officers, 15 years each. Deputy Howell, 5 years, sentence reduced for testimony. Deacon Hayes, no prison time, but removed from his church position. He spent the rest of his days working with orphans, trying to balance the scales of what he'd done. And the women, all 16 of them, had their debts declared void and received reparations from the seized assets of the convicted men. But the real victory came on a Sunday morning, 6 months after everything changed. I stood on my rebuilt porch and watched Beatrice teaching 3 other girls, daughters of ranchers, all of them hearing and speaking, how to communicate with hand signs she'd learned from a book Mrs. Whitmore ordered from back east. Midge stood beside me, her hand resting light on my arm. We weren't married, not yet. But we'd found something more important than a ceremony. We'd found a reason to wake up and build something together. You know what I realized? Midge said. What's that? You didn't save us that day in Gantry's office. The words stung, till I saw her smile. We saved each other. You needed someone to be brave for, and we needed someone brave enough to stand. None of us could have done it alone. She was right. Grant barked once, and I looked up to see a rider approaching, Marshal Coleman, back from Austin. He dismounted, tipped his hat to Midge, and handed me an envelope. What's this? Reward money. States offering compensation to citizens who expose corruption in territorial offices. Your portion comes to $500. I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. I didn't do it for money. I know, but you earned it anyway. Use it to keep building. After he left, I opened the envelope. $500. More money than I'd seen since before the war. I looked at Midge. She looked at Beatrice, teaching those girls with infinite patience. School, Midge said softly. We could build a school, a real one, where children like Beatrice, different children, are welcome. A school, I repeated, and the word tasted like hope. 30 years later, that school still stands. The Pritchett Drummond Academy, folks call it. Teaches reading, writing, arithmetic, and sign language to any child who walks through the door. Beatrice ran it for 40 years before her daughter took over. Yes, her daughter, born to a loving husband who never cared that she couldn't speak, because he said her silence taught him how to truly listen. Midge and I? We were married by Judge Moss on a spring morning, with half the county watching. She never got her hearing back, but she said she didn't need it, said she could read everything important in a person's eyes. We had 20 good years before she passed. Cancer, quiet, and mean. But even at the end, she held my damaged hand and smiled. We did all right, didn't we? She whispered. Better than all right. Then I ain't got regrets. Neither did I. So that's the story of how a deaf widow, a mute girl, and a broken-down soldier taught a Texas town that dignity don't come from what you got, but from what you're willing to stand for. And if you're listening to this from somewhere far away, wondering if one person can still make a difference in a world gone cold, well, I'm here to tell you they can, but only if they choose to. Only if they step through that door when they hear someone scratching on the other side. I'm 88 years old now, sitting on this same porch Clara's grandfather built. Beatrice's granddaughter just brought me coffee. She's got Midge's eyes and that same quiet strength. And when I close my eyes, I can still hear it. Chalk scraping against a board, desperate and determined. The sound that changed everything. The sound that proved silence can be the loudest cry for help, if someone's brave enough to listen. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. You're sitting there wondering if this story's even true, if things like this really happened, or if I'm just an old man spinning tales to pass the time. And here's what I'll tell you. Every word of it's true. Not just the facts, though those are recorded in the county courthouse if you care to look, but the truth underneath. The truth about what happens when ordinary people decide they've had enough of looking away. See, dignity ain't something you're born with or given by others. It's something you claim, something you stand for when standing costs you everything. Marjorie Pritchett could have paid Gantry's price and disappeared into shame. Beatrice could have stayed silent forever, let the world ignore her. I could have bought my tobacco and walked out that door. But we didn't. And that choice, that simple, terrifying choice to say, not today, not to these people, that's what changed everything. I learned something in those days I want to share with you. Family ain't always blood. Sometimes family is the folks who stand with you when the torches come. Sometimes it's a deaf widow who teaches you how to listen, or a silent girl who shows you that words ain't the only way to speak truth. And justice. Real justice don't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's just one person saying, I see you, you matter, and I ain't walking away. So if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told you don't matter because of what you lack or what you've lost, I'm here to tell you that's a lie. You matter. Your dignity matters. And somewhere out there, someone's waiting for the courage to stand with you. Maybe that someone is you. This story took place in Texas, 1867. But the choice at the heart of it, that choice happens every day, everywhere. In small towns and big cities, in offices and homes and streets, the question's always the same. Will you walk away, or will you step through that door? I hope you choose the door. If this story touched something in you, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know where you're listening from. Drop a comment, tell me your corner of the world. Because stories like this, they need to travel. They need to remind folks that courage is contagious and dignity is worth fighting for. Until next time, friends, may your dignity carry you through the dark times. May you find family in unexpected places. And may you always have the courage to answer when you hear someone scratching at the door. This is the end of our story. But maybe, just maybe, it's the beginning of yours.